36 years after publishing the novel, author Stephen King returned to the world of The Shining with his follow-up novel Dr. Sleep, tracing the life of young Dan Torrance after the fateful events of that debut novel. But while Dr. Sleep served as a sequel to King's original novel, there was also the elephant in the room to contend with: Stanley Kubrick's classic adaptation from 1980 starring Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall. King has been vocal throughout the years over his displeasure with Kubrick's film, calling it cold and lamenting the lack of an arc for Jack Nicholson's Jack Torrance, as well as a very different ending than what was written. So where does that leave a sequel to one of the most famous horror films of all time that was not beloved by the original author? Enter director Mike Flanagan, who has made a name for himself in the genre in the last few years with films like Oculus, Hush, Before I Wake, Ouija: Origin of Evil, and most recently the much-revered The Haunting of Hill House miniseries on Netflix. Having been deeply affected by Kubrick's film and King's novel, the filmmaker was in a position to appease two distinct audiences: fans of the film and fans of the book, both The Shining and Dr. Sleep. A feat that was sure to ruffle feathers any way you slice it. Growing up, I always had an intense fear of The Shining. It was a movie I would only ever watch in pieces as it was too much for one sitting. But as an adult, it morphed into an intense, slow-burn thriller that was more style than scares. My curiosity was piqued at the prospect of a sequel, and I decided to read King's follow-up, finding Dr. Sleep to be more of a cool supernatural thriller than a genuine scary horror tale. In fact, it was the easiest and most satisfying Stephen King read I've ever had. With that in mind, the only way I could watch the film was as a fan of the book, which is also the only way I can review it, so keep that bias in mind for the proceeding. Dr. Sleep picks up almost directly after the events of The Shining, with young Danny and his mother, played by Alex Esso in place of Shelley Duvall, living in Florida where Danny is struggling with his powers and still being haunted by the ghosts of the Overlook Hotel. A visit from his deceased mentor, Dick Halloran, played by Carl Lumbly here in place of Scatman Crothers, helps Danny begin to control his abilities. But it's a short-lived solution, as Danny soon turns to his late father's vice to numb the shining: alcohol. Ewan McGregor takes on the role of adult Danny Torrance, now about the same age as his father before he met his end, although we jump in time from childhood to adulthood, and then another 8-year jump to present day. And after hitting rock bottom in an alcoholic haze, finds himself stepping off the bus in a New Hampshire's town to start fresh. It's here that Danny plants his roots and begins to rebuild his life, joining AA with the help of a local man, Billy Freeman, played by Cliff Curtis, and finding a job as an orderly at a hospice, where his abilities come in handy to help ease the transition from life to death for the patients there, earning him the nickname Dr. Sleep, which is also a nod to his childhood nickname of Doc. While Danny attempts to live a renewed life and use his shine for good, he suddenly finds playful messages being left with him via a chalkboard in his home. This, of course, is Abra Stone, played by newcomer Kylie Curran, a young girl with a shine more powerful than he's ever seen, who is struggling with her powers the same as Danny did, albeit with less ghostly hauntings. Of course, a power like that has a far reach, and Abra attracts the attention of a vicious group of supernatural empty devils known as the True Knot, a band of vampire-like creatures that feed off the shine, which allows them to live well beyond their time. The leader of this group is a woman of immense power called simply Rose the Hat, as played by Rebecca Ferguson, in a role that is sure to enter the horror zeitgeist in a big way. After discovering the existence of Abra and with their supply of steam, which is kept in canisters to feed from, running low, Rose the Hat and her band of creepy creatures embark on the task of securing the young girl to harness the power that resides within her. Director Mike Flanagan tackles Dr. Sleep in a mostly straightforward manner, never diving too deep into the stylish realm, which helps keep the story grounded when it needs to be. However, there are certainly some creative leaps throughout, particularly when characters are utilizing their shine abilities, taking the audience on a flightful mind warp of a journey to emphasize the otherworldliness of these moments. Outside of that, the film rests easily in a fairly grounded world, utilizing CGI sparingly and as needed rather than in abundance. This helps immerse you in the world of Dr. Sleep without ever feeling like it's too unbelievable. McGregor's Danny Torrance is an engaging protagonist and a very different one than his cinematic father, Jack Nicholson. He's more in control of himself, more confident, and certainly a lot less crazy, but he's no less conflicted. Danny, unlike his father, is gifted, or cursed depending on how you see it, with the shine, and McGregor brings an everyman approach to this dilemma. It doesn't hurt that he has a natural charm and screen presence, making Danny not only someone to root for, but someone to care about. An early scene where Danny talks about his sobriety at an AA meeting gives McGregor some good scenery to chew on, and connects the dots to the relationship with his father, who ultimately lost the battle against the bottle. It feels natural that Danny would help Abra, who seeks him out as the only person that she can speak to via her powers. But he's reluctant at first, and with good reason, given his own haunted history. McGregor's Danny becomes exactly what we didn't have in The Shining, a genuine protagonist, and in this case, a flawed yet heroic lead. As Abra, newcomer Kylie Curran wavers between sprightly teenager to a vengeful force of nature. As in the book, Abra isn't exactly a squeaky clean protagonist, but a layered individual, struggling to harness her abilities while also dealing with a darker nature that clouds her judgment. Curran balances this dynamic gracefully, allowing the audience to side with her plight even as she challenges us with her darker moments. She's the redemption of this story, but it hinges on a fine thread for Danny, who takes it upon himself to protect and save her at all costs, while also teaching her to harness her abilities in a way he never could. The chemistry between Curran and McGregor is very much paternal, with her even referring to him as Uncle Dan. Ultimately, they're a duo that's easy to root for, especially when dealing with a villainous lot like the True Knot. Speaking of that dastardly group, the True Knot come to life in an interesting way, just as they do in the book. A group of vagabond, gypsy-esque supernatural demons, the group is distinct in that they very much care for one another, while carrying on their way of life that involves torturing and killing children to capture their shine and feed on it. It's an interesting angle, and it makes Dr. Sleep a very different film than The Shining, which ended up making the protagonist the antagonist. Here it's very clear who the good and bad guys are, making it stand apart from the single location setting of its predecessor. It serves the story well and allows us to jump into the skin of both sides, which is often underserved in most tales of this nature. The standout for the antagonist, of course, is Rebecca Ferguson's Rose the Hat. It's rare that we get a truly memorable female villain like her, and with Rose we get not only a villain, but a charismatic one that exudes strength, sexuality, charm, and, oh yeah, pure evil. Ferguson lives and breathes the role, making an iconic horror character out of Rose the Hat that is sure to be remembered for years to come. If there's any doubt of that early on, there's a scene towards the middle of the film that shows just how evil she really is, which pulls no punches in its depiction of her violent, torturous tendencies. It most certainly makes you believe in her capabilities to take on Danny and Abra, and the scope of her power is shown to be something to contend with. Rose the Hat will no doubt enter the Horror Icon Hall of Fame, and I imagine we'll see many a costume in her image come next Halloween. Dr. Sleep unfolds exceptionally, immersing us in the world of Danny Torrance alongside Abra and the True Knot, taking us to modern day and crafting a story that unfolds with urgency, as Danny rallies to help save Abra from the threat of Rose the Hat and the True Knot. The supporting players that comprise the group make for some particularly nasty baddies, including Zahn McClarnon as Crow Daddy and Emily Allen Lind as Snakebite Andy. Far too often the supporting bad guys feel just like henchmen, but here they're distinct and with their own deadly abilities. All the actors pull their weight, giving the film an air of authenticity and character. In addition, the score to the film is a standout, composed by longtime Flanagan collaborators the Newton brothers, hitting all the right beats for atmosphere and, of course, those pesky jump scares, which are peppered throughout to keep you alert. And let's not forget the excellent sound design, which is expertly woven to make you hide, jump, and wince at all the right moments. Flanagan knows what the audience needs in a film like this, and plays us like a fiddle. Of course, the moment that everyone will be waiting for is the return to the Overlook, which ends up being a moment that's more rousing than you may be anticipating. The legacy of The Shining is so strong that even hearing a hint of the old score as Danny makes his way back to the place that's plagued him his whole life is enough to strangely make you want to clap and cheer. It's an odd feeling, yet there it is. Of course, this is also where the film detours greatly from the book, while still setting the final showdown in that infamous location. Now, fans of the book will be torn here, as I was, but after giving it some thought, I couldn't deny that it was an absolutely fitting and damn near perfect closing to the Torrance family saga. In fact, it feels more akin to what King wanted for his characters for the finale of Kubrick's film. Somehow, Dr. Sleep manages to tie together the books and the films in a completely consistent and satisfying way, which is no small feat given the massive fan base of both. While I still toil with a few of the notable things omitted from the book, it was fairly easy to make peace with the other great stuff that was brought to life and how the conclusion of this story came together on screen. In terms of scares, Dr. Sleep has plenty, but like comedy, it's completely dependent on what you find scary or don't. It's hard to deny some of the creepy imagery and some downright heinous deaths, some in ways you may not expect, but ultimately the movie has stakes, which always helps make the level of fear palpable. Personally, I found it more thrilling than frightening, but again, that comes down to my own sensibilities. As a Stephen King adaptation, Dr. Sleep ranks among one of the best, helped tremendously by a cast and crew that lend genuine effort to continuing the legacy of this story. Like It Chapter 1 and 2, Dr. Sleep benefits from A-list talent and a budget that leaves little to be desired outside what's supplied, allowing for a complete tale to be told without sacrifice, which is equal parts sequel, homage, and original tale. Completely entertaining on all counts. Although there are creative cuts made from book to film that may disappoint some, fans of King, Flanagan, The Shining, and cool supernatural horror flicks will no doubt find much to love in this legacy-spanning film. I know I'll dare to go back for multiple viewings. With that, I give Dr. Sleep a shine of 8 on 10. I'm Paul Shirey with JoBlo.com.
They're coming. Where are we going?
There's a place. You sure you want to do this?
I'm ready.
Yes, you run, dear. And then I will find you, and you will scream for years.
Come play with us forever and ever.